right, Ellis Cinema back, another dish. How we doing out there? Good, great, Dayan Puke. Thank you for joining the most unlistenable movie podcast there is out there. So, as you see on your screen, your dial, however you're choosing to join me today, I know the cast and crew of this film definitely appreciate you. Notice how I did not say me. The Witch 2. The other one. The Witch 2. The other one. This is a sequel to a movie I did back, it's got to be, 3-ish years ago at this point. Finally, the much hyped sequel has hit physical release and streaming, which you can get right now as we're talking The Witch The Witch 2, the other one. It is directed by Park Hoon-Jung, who did New World and, of course, the first installment, The Witch Subversion. And also definitely features a stellar cast, including newcomer Cynthia, the award-winning Park Yoo-bin, who was in Stove League, Do You Like Brahms? It's also got Seo Eun-soo, My Golden Life, Kingmaker. We got Jingu from Mother. If you haven't seen that one, that's a wild one. Descendants of the Sun. Sung Yoo-bin, who was in The Battle, Road to Victory, Perhaps Love, as well as Cho Min-soo, Lee Jong-seok, and Kim Da-mi, who was in the first one, the protagonist in the first one. I'm not really going to be getting into part one. I'll just say this is the second installment into a very big Korean film, or a very big undertaking for this particular Korean film. So, couple things. Not going to trash it. Not going to laud over it. I have very mixed emotions about this one, and I kind of knew going into it that we probably weren't going to have necessarily the quality of the first one. Reason being is the first one is actually packaged and marketed by Warner Brothers. So, in the first one, you see that Warner Brothers logo come across the screen. You're like, oh shit. They went and scooped up the rights for the Witch, this Witch series from these Korean filmmakers. So they got money, they got distribution. Should be a pretty big payout, or at least get audience members that maybe you didn't have before just by having that logo. Second one starts out, and there is no Warner Brothers logo, so I don't know what happened kind of in the interim, and I didn't really feel like researching it. One, because you guys know I don't really research much. This is a show to get you to watch something. I'm not necessarily selling you on it, just trying to give you my passion, but I kind of knew, what happened, so, and another thing too is it me going forward with the research and finding out whatever the reason was that Warner Brothers decided to drop this movie. I don't know, and I don't care because it doesn't matter. For the most part, it plays well. There's a couple moments where, kind of like a lot of Asian action films, where we, and I've mentioned it in shows previous that you guys listened to before, they have a tough time giving too much of a shit about their CG effects. And, if you're a artist, you could make the argument that it doesn't, one, we don't have the money to do this practical, and this is a very big film, very science fiction-y, very thrillery, and I understand it from that point. So, if a filmmaker's just like, listen, did the sentiment come across? Because that's, if the story's not coming across, I don't really give a shit about what the effects look like. And I would listen to that argument, like it shouldn't matter. Like if you can't pay for, a $15 million action car sequence or whatever the hell it is, the story should be able to stand on its own. And for the most part, it does. It gets a little convoluted here and there, but it's not, completely misunderstood, or between honestly, it's the time jumping isn't what kind of messed with me. It was kind of keeping track of a bunch of characters that the way that it's executed, we are meant to care one way or another, whether you want the character to die or you want the character to live. They present so many characters in a very short period of time, and I will give the film credit. For the most part, it's executed perfectly. Like, I am giving a shit about the villains. I am caring a little bit about our hero. Now, if I'm being honest with myself and to you guys, I cared more about the protagonist in the first one than I do this one. But nevertheless, I mean, between the acting, some of the action pieces, and it's emotional in this too, which... so don't think that I'm saying, oh, the first one's so much better. It's just kind of, I think sometimes critics out there are a little too tough and not taking a step back and looking at the situation. Like, this movie wants to be in the same stratosphere of big as, like a Marvel movie or something like that. Now, it's much darker than a Marvel movie, so obviously you're going to eliminate some of your audience. I believe both these films are rated R, and that's just going to happen, nature of the beast. And just so we're clear, I don't want it to be a PG-13 film. I think you would lose some of the intensity that this film brings. So... you just gotta keep that in mind. I've read a couple reviews from people online about this one, and they're not saying that it's bad, but you can definitely tell like it wasn't considered like an absolute epic, which is what I think the filmmakers were trying to do. I think in terms of the size of it, it stands on its own pretty well. I think where it kind of buckles a little bit is... maybe shoehorning a character in here and there. One that comes to mind who I actually thought did a really good job. And one of the actors, you kind of have a comedic duo, almost a buddy duo between a Korean woman and a South African man. But the fact of the matter is, there's a way that you can implement those two in there where it doesn't feel forced upon you. And there are just moments where those two, though their acting is good and they're nailing the lines that they're getting, or facial expressions, especially from the South African dude, that it plays really well, but I almost feel like we're just inserting it in here so the film as a whole doesn't come off as dark. There's something more. There's something more redeeming than just how the end kind of comes to a close. And just so you guys know, it ain't a ending at part 2, so be on the lookout for part 3. No spoilers. I ain't gonna tell you how we get there or what you do see at the end, but this was always meant to be, I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, this was always meant to be a trilogy. Now, some of the parts where I kind of felt we had a real opportunity to do something different from the first one, the fact of the matter is we just didn't. There are moments, several moments throughout this film. And again, just so we're clear, this is not me saying that the film's bad, not at all. In fact, I'm one of those people that I don't shit on pieces like Marvel or Star Wars or anything for trying to get that bag, right? Trying to get that money. I don't shit on people. Like, I think something that resonated with me, which is kind of funny, Michael Bay, it was either Michael Bay or Jerry Bruckheimer said it best: I'll stop making these when you guys stop going to see them. So the fact of the matter is, all the people that bitch about Transformers and Bad Boys and whatever the fuck else, they wouldn't make those films if you stopped showing up to go see them. So, when you look at it in the context of this one, like, the first installment was highly anticipated, played really well. And the second one, they tried to just take a lot of things. And what you'll learn is we have two different girls that are the protagonists of this. They are both experiments. The experiments made to be killing machines, okay? So, in fact, I'll read a little bit of the synopsis. In the sequel to the famous Korean sci-fi in this sequel to the famous Korean sci-fi action thriller The Witch Subversion, again, this is part 2 called The Other One, the story moves away from a confined secret lab and out into the real world. After a mysterious girl emerges as the sole survivor of a bloody raid on the research facility behind the top-secret witch program, I'm going to say that again so you guys get a little synopsis. After a mysterious girl emerges as the sole survivor of a bloody raid on the research facility behind the top-secret witch program, she is rescued by a pair of civilians who soon realize the girl is both mighty and in very grave danger. However, as the assassins tasked with locating and silencing the girl move ever so closer, the lives of everyone around her fall under increasingly great peril. The most important thing anybody should know in this one is that everybody wants to kidnap or ally with Cynthia, which is our new protagonist. I believe she's called Arc 2 or Arc 1. That's her scientific name. Let me double check for you. In present day, yeah, Arc 1. So Cynthia is just a name that she was given, but she is Arc 1, ARK1. And so the most important thing to know is that everybody wants to either kidnap or ally with Cynthia. Now, remember how I said it gets a kind of confusing, like in terms of how many characters are brought to light? Well, listen to this. Kidnap or ally with Cynthia, and they're all somehow related to each other. Seriously. Everybody in this film is somebody's ex-partner, ex-sibling, or potential future partner or ex-partner. The good news is for the second screen viewer is you don't need to. Did I tell you about the term second screen viewer? This is this new term that I just learned and it drives me fucking nuts. I read an article 2 weeks ago that's kind of shit on a TV show, one of the executives, and I believe it was at Netflix, don't quote me on that, but believe it was at Netflix where one of the TV shows that they were doing, some of the notes that those filmmakers of that TV show got was, it is not second screen friendly enough, which means that you need to not be so detailed with the plot so that the person watching the show on their second screen, because the first is their fucking cell phone, the viewers might get confused. Is this what we're coming to, gang? You need to have your phone. I don't understand. Like, you watch movies and TV shows to get something out of it, to feel something, right? I mean, just in vague blanket terms, right? You know, you look at cat videos to be happy, blah, blah, blah. Well, you sit down a movie for the same shit. You sit down for the movie, get through the story, and then you determine whether you like it or not. This idea that you need, like, if you're bored, here's a fucking idea. Turn it off and give something else a chance. Don't fucking get 25% out of it because you were on your fucking phone. That said, the second screen, the good news for the second screen viewer is that you don't need to keep a list of all the relationships that are going on here, because it does get kind of bogged down and a little wordy in how all these people know each other and what they want from each other, so I'm not even going to deny that. But the fact of the matter is, you can fucking try, and you ain't gonna fucking know if you got your goddamn phone out. Shit. Why do I need it? Why do you make me say this shit to you people? Can you tell I'm still fucking stewing about that goddamn article? Dude, it drives me nuts. Like, I'm not this type of person that I used to be, like, say, 10 years ago, where it's like, oh, fucking Vine and TikTok and all that other shit, stupid. Listen, however you get entertained, do your thing. But, like, you owe it to whoever made that TikTok, that fucking whatever you watched on X or Instagram, blah, 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 snore. you owe it to them to give them your undivided attention. I don't understand why you can't just do the same with movies. Like, what? Just put your phone in another fucking room. Like, to me, and I'm not even going to sit here and try to front with y'all. Like, I do, sometimes I'm reaching for my phone in lulls in different movies. I just did it with fucking Monkey Man, which is a fine movie, but there's a couple parts, like, you get to the point where you've seen as many movies as me and some of the other people that do movie podcasts, you can spot a beat from a mile away, a beat within the script, a beat within the action, you know, whatever, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I haven't tried to reach for my phone a couple times. Would you like a little pro tip for yourself? Put your phone in another fucking room, because, like, if I'm watching something at home, and even if I start getting a little bored by what I'm seeing, I may reach in my pocket for my phone, but if it's another room, I just give up. Like, I may reach for it once or twice throughout a film that I'm watching that may not be the most engaging, but the fact of the matter is my phone's in another fucking room, so I end up providing my full attention, to whatever we're watching. So, something to consider, gang. I don't know. I just assume you turn something off. Well, see, I go back and forth on that, because if you're 22 minutes into a movie that you've never seen, or if you're 22 minutes into a show that you just started, I would argue there's no possible way for you to gauge if you're going to like it or not. And, you know, there's nuances to everything. Like, if you're not a horror fan and, you know, your significant other like me turns on something that's just completely brutally violent, all right, well, then move on to the next one if it's not your bag. But in terms of, like, you know, everybody should watch dramas, so in that context, like, you're not going to be able to tell or have a good idea of a fucking story if you watch 31 minutes of a French drama from the fucking 70s. It's impossible. So I go back and forth on that. But I'm also saying to you, so I don't sound like such a fucking fossil and old head, just turn it the fuck off and find something else, you know? But the main thing is get yourself out of this headspace that you can be doing both, being on your phone and watching a film. No, you can't. Not to fully engulf yourself in the piece that you're watching. It's impossible. It's impossible. I talk to my chick about this all the time. Momentum. You know, you're an hour and 15 minutes into a 2-hour movie, and you pause it and take a fucking 30-minute break. You don't have the same momentum going into the end of Act 2 into Act 3 that you did if you just would have stayed put. So you're actually doing yourself a disservice in terms of how you're going to take in whatever media you're watching. Are we even talking about Witch 2 anymore? Jesus Christ. Why do you always... This is why I said this is the most unlistenable podcast ever. Don't know how much longer I'm going to be doing it, but you know, whatever. I have obligations, and then after I fulfill all 82 of my obligations, I'm going to reassess on whether or not I should continue fucking doing this. But anyway, that's here nor there. That's a long time off. So, second screen viewer. It does help to know that the wheelchair-bound Dr. Bach, who was in part 1, Dr. Bayach, who was in part 1, she's got a little bit of a cordial rivalry going on. Here, I'm not going to tell you if you haven't seen part 1, I'm not going to tell you what her character is responsible for, nor her relationships with some of the characters on here. But like I said, you're going to have, if you are going to be interested in see this, whether you like a couple of the pictures that I posted on it, I urge you to go back and watch the first one, which I believe is on Prime right now and Hi-Ya TV, maybe even Tubi. I got to tell you, just a little side note, Tubi is getting some awesome selections. Just throwing that out there. But so this is going to be more part 2 centric. Anyway, Dr. Bayach has a cordial rivalry with Jang, who I mentioned earlier, and they are both looking for Ja-yoon after the events of The Witch Part 1. So that's Ja-yoon, who is the protagonist from the first one. But we may have ourselves another problem, because it looks like some other chick is ready to fucking find the people responsible for essentially stealing her childhood. But much of The Witch Part 2 concerns the confluence of the captors that surround Cynthia. And there's also a decent-sized B story involving Ki-hung Yi and Dae-gil, who are already embroiled in this Western-style plot to protect their dead dad's land from murderous Uncle Young-do, played by Jin-gu. But all subplots come back to Cynthia, a blessedly uncomplicated character with no past and a striking resemblance to our protagonist from the first one, Ja-yoon. So a lot to like throughout here. There are several scenes that, if you listen to the show, I mention it all the time. There's a way that Asian filmmakers conduct the choreography of for a fight scene that we just don't do very often here, and it's very prevalent in this. They are South Korea, I would argue, is making probably the best overall films in the past decade, or at least up there. And it shows in this one. They have an eye that sometimes you just don't, or for most of the time, you just don't see with American filmmakers. So it's really fun to kind of see, like the bus sequence that happens in the beginning. The way that it's done is really good. A couple of the sequences towards the end I thought were really good in terms of how it's presented to us, whether when the score hits when it's supposed to, the effects. There's several times throughout this where one thing that I will say that Asian filmmakers do, like, I rip on the quality of CG a lot, I do. But I will say they use it, you can tell where they spend their money. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, there are certain things that you're like, ooh, that was a little rocky. But then they save the money for, let's say, some of the end sequences that I'm not going to spoil here and there. Where the movie falls just a little short in comparison to the first is... it has heart in this film. I'm not even going to pretend that it doesn't. But like the first one, just not to me it doesn't. I feel like I cared more for our protagonist in The Witch Part 1 than I did Part 2. I'm just going to be honest with you. And I understand that the way that they're shaping it, ultimately we're going to care about both of them heading into the third when all the fucking... shit-ass villains meet their demise, but we're not there yet, so I just got to call a spade a spade. I feel we sacrificed, and all action films do this, not just The Witch Part 2. Sometimes we will sacrifice plot for action sequences. Most notable that I can think of in recent memory that just absolutely fucking annoyed the shit out of me was Aquaman, the first one. I haven't watched the second one yet. Who knows when I'll get around to that, but definitely the first one. I felt like every time we were about to have a good moment, a good emotional moment, it is derailed by explosions and action pieces and blah, blah, blah. And I found myself thinking that a couple times within this one, even though I prefer the action that I'm seeing in this one than I do Aquaman. But nevertheless, that flaw is still there, where there's several times where I'm like, oh, fuck, man, I want to care. Like, there's a scene with... I'll just say an uncle in Arc 1, and I wanted to care more about those two in the moment than I did. Whereas I want to say the last third of this movie, I just kind of wanted it to end so we could get to the third one. Like, I felt like I had seen all I needed to see for Cynthia's character. It wasn't near as fleshed out as the girl from the first one, and I feel like we were kind of limping into the third installment. And that's coming off the heels of me saying that I think that they put their money in the right places for Act 3. I really do believe that, but you can only do so much with so many characters within a film. It's a hell of a lot easier to do, let's say, a Game of Thrones or a Lord of the Rings, where Game of Thrones, where you have all these characters, you can stretch that into a TV show. I think very rarely do we see an occurrence like Lord of the Rings with the extended edition, where we have all these characters, but that extra hour and 20 minutes per film really plays dividends. But if you think back, there's not a whole lot where it's successful if you have fucking 10 to 15 characters, right? And trying to get everybody their moment. Like, I go back to the example that I said at the top of the show, between the Korean and South African that are looking for Cynthia. Like, I know that I'm meant to care about these characters in some form, whether they're good or evil, but I don't. You know, like, I feel like, man, you know what you want to know what I felt about the couple, and again, not saying anything bad about their performance. I thought their performance was good. In fact, the comedy actually works, but it does feel like it's kind of shoved down my throat in a way where it's just like, yeah, the first one was pretty dark, right? Let's have some comedy, you know? Let's have some comedy. But, I mean, it is what it is. You can't, it's teeters on fucking impossible. By the way, I've been saying that the character's name is Cynthia the whole time. That's actually the actress's name. I do apologize. Her name in this is actually just Girl or Arc 1. Cynthia is the name of the actress who plays the girl. So we got Cynthia playing the girl. We got Min-soo, who plays Dr. Bayak. We got Kim Da-mi, who plays Koo Ja-yoon, or Ja-yoon-koo, which was for the first one, but I'm not going to ruin anything, but we'll just say she makes an appearance, right, gang? We got Sung Yoo-bin, who plays Dae-gil. We got Park Yoo-bin, who plays Kyung-hee. We got Seo Eun-soo, who plays Joy-hyun. We got Justin John Harvey, who plays Tom. That's the South African, who has some great moments and some great lines in this, and I actually really enjoy his character. I guess part of me, maybe we could have brought them in towards the tail end of the first, and then that way going into the second one, I don't know. I'm a fucking armchair critic. So, and I even hate the fact that I'm considered a critic, because I don't think I'm considered a critic. I'm just kind of telling you, hey, this is why I like the film. This is why I didn't fucking like the film. Last but not least, we got Jin-gu, who plays Yeon-du. We got music by Moog, M-O-W-G. It was nice to finally look up something on IMDb where we had more than 3 credits for an Asian film. If you've listened to any of my podcasts before, between China's the one where it's the worst, where you have this big production. In fact, listen to my... Actually, I don't know. I can't remember if I mentioned it on my most recent episode, Sakura, starring Donnie Yen. If you go to IMDb, apparently, according to IMDb, like 7 people worked on that film. And if it's not Sakura, it's definitely like where you're just like, wait a minute. So there was no production designers on this? There was no, like this doesn't make any sense. So anyway, Moog did the music, and they've done music for I Saw the Devil, which was fucking fantastic. If you haven't seen that, I mean, it's brutal, but it's a great film. The Age of Shadows, Silenced, A Company Man, which is a huge Korean film, Unstoppable, Peninsula, Cobweb, and, of course, The Witch Part 1, Subversion. And then behind the camera, we got Kim Young-ho, who's doing the cinematography for this. And then our writer-director, Park Hoon-Jung, who also wrote I Saw the Devil, The Tiger, which I actually really enjoyed The Tiger way more than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be so stupid. Good stuff. New World, and so much more. Check it out. I definitely, obviously, watched the first one, and another thing too, get excited about the idea of a trilogy. We don't, think of, statistically speaking, how many more one-offs we get in film than we do building this big storyline into an epic ending. We don't get that very often. So for nothing else, watch it for that we get a big budget Korean film that you get to see these people exercise their skills, because for the most part, this movie plays well. I think the only reason I was bogged down by it is, well, one, you got to understand, I probably watch 15 new movies a week, so I think I watched this one like 2 weeks ago, so I have seen a lot in between. But nevertheless, still worth your time, I promise you. I wouldn't drag you out listening to this fucking podcast for nothing. Ellis Cinema. The Witch 2. The Other One. Wellgo USA presents another good one. You can stream this on Haya TV, Prime. You can get the physical disc, which is available now. The Witch 2, The Other One, Ellis Cinema. Ha ha ha, we go.